A band who has influenced many, many people over the years are a wonderful Australian band called the Hard-Ons. They are celebrating 30 years as a band. Let's hear one of my favourite songs from the Hard-Ons, Girl in the Sweater, and then we're going to catch up with Mr. Ray Ahn, the man who founded the Hard-Ons. You are listening to Short, Fast, Loud tonight on Triple J. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome back to the show Ray Ahn from the Hard-Ons. How are you, sir?
Hi, Stu. I'm doing well. I'm a bit tired, but I'm okay. We're on tour at the moment in WA.
Why are you tired, Ray? I thought you'd be gig fit after 30 years of doing this.
I'm 48, mate.
That explains why you're tired.
Yeah. Energy levels go down when you're a bit older. I'm not as fit as I used to be.
48. That's pretty incredible, Ray. So the Hard-Ons started when you were 18.
No, earlier. Actually, I joined the band when I was. I met the guys when I was 10.
Yeah.
But they formed the band without me when we were 15, and I joined the band when I was 16, like a year later, and then we changed the name to the Hard-Ons after I joined.
Right.
That was 1981. Like, I guess I was 15 going on 16.
How did you meet?
Well, we went to primary school together, and after that we all went to the same high school together as well. So we were all, reasonably good friends. I mean, the drummer Kesh lived around the corner from me, very close neighbours, and Blackie didn't live that far away either. So we'd always see each other, but once we entered high school, I guess that's when we were like 12 or something, all of us got right into rock and roll music, not just punk, but all sorts of heavy metal and hard rock and all that kind of stuff. But obviously that was like the late 70s, so the big deal back then was punk rock. That was like everyone's favourite form of music was punk rock, Sex Pistols, The Damned, The Birthday Party, that kind of stuff. Everyone loved that kind of stuff in our school group.
And so the three of you decided you're going to form a band. How did Kesh become the drummer?
It was one of those things when you form a band together and nobody actually knows what to do. You just allocate.
It was that simple. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you just allocate instruments to each other. So the band that I joined before they became the Hard-Ons was called the Dead Rats, and they had a guy named Brendan who was playing drums and singing, and he used to swap with Kesh, and then Kesh would sing. Kesh would play drums, and Brendan would go at the front and play. Brendan would go on. Sometimes Brendan would play drums, and Kesh would play drums, and they swap, and one would sing when the other one would be playing drums, and all that kind of stuff. And they had a bass player in waiting. His name was Peter, who he could play and everything, but he was a little bit well, he liked a lot of hard rock and Janis Joplin, that kind of stuff. And
Right.
also,
Okay.
I think he also suffered a little bit from stage fright. Whereas, yeah, like the three members that ended up being the Hard-Ons, all of us were pretty arrogant show-offs, so we didn't have any sort of issues with stage fright or anything. You had three, kind of like cocky little kids just going crazy on stage. So I replaced the kind of like the big good player who used to play with his fingers. I was like the little guy with tons of unmitigated gall, but absolutely no talent whatsoever. but when you're forming a band, you kind of go for the guy who fits ideologically rather than musically first. When you're 15, they're the things you're looking for. The guy with the right cut of jeans, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I never used to wear flares. Peter used to wear flared jeans. I never used to. I used to wear straight legs.
Well, there's no. It's pretty obvious why you got the gig then.
Oh yeah, because I fit in more ideologically with the other two guys.
Oh, I just thought because you didn't wear flares. That makes complete sense to me, Ray.
It's part of being ideologically in tune. the right cut of jeans.
It's very important. And it's funny how the right cut of jeans has been important right the way through the history of rock and roll.
Well, me and Blackie, when the Hard-Ons broke up, we formed a band called Nunchucker Superfly, and when we were auditioning people to sing for us, a guy turned up to sing for us. He was in a band called Glass Onion at the time.
Yep.
He was a supremely talented singer, really nice bloke and nice singer. And when he left the rehearsal room, we all looked at each other and went, gee, he's really good. He's a talented guy. And Blackie pointed out that he had his shirt tucked in. It's like, well, he can't join the band. He's a shirt tucker. You can't play in a band with somebody who tucks his shirt in.
I love it.
And that's a true story. He never made the cut because he tucked his shirt in. You can't. None of us could actually imagine playing in a band with somebody who, wakes up and tucks his shirt into his jeans.
Something about you.
I am talking to Ray Ahn from the Hard-Ons. They are out on the road at the moment to celebrate 30 years of the Hard-Ons. As we just heard from Ray, things did kick off a little bit sooner, but 30 years since they became the Hard-Ons. Ray, I've got written down here the 21st of July, 1984.
Right, that was the first gig we played in a pub. So that's the celebration day of our inaugural concert in a pub. We just basically had to bide our time a little bit, being a little bit too young, playing school dances and stuff. But I think it actually really helped the band because we had 3 years of playing school parties and birthday parties, people's backyard parties and whatnot, and we played in a lot of council halls and church halls and that kind of stuff, and that actually put us in good stead because some of the gigs were full of our friends, and other gigs were full of some pretty hostile people. So it put us in good stead. By the time I spent 3 years as little kids playing those parties. By the time we played the pub, it just felt like we were ready and we got a lot of hostility from audiences as well as adulation in equal measure. But we were ready for it by then because we were all 18 and we'd been playing for 3 years at school parties. So it was okay. Yeah.
Why were you copping hostility? Were you playing with other kind of punk bands at the time?
A big thing back in the 80s, in the early 80s, was fascist in the punk scene.
Of course,
we did play with a lot of punk bands, and it's one of those, punk scene is a really weird thing. They attract all sorts of people into that scene for whatever reason. A lot of different type of misfits and ideologies. So those people tend to not like coloured people. So if you're playing in a punk band with 3 different skin colour, then you do cop a little bit of rubbish, but that's okay. I mean, it's just another learning thing for the Hard-Ons. I mean, it's the wide world out there was racist to begin with, and the punk scene is a real, I guess, an intense version of it. You've got 300 people in the room with intense issues on their shoulders, and all they want to do is get their eardrums blasted for 1 hour, and so they're really volatile things, those punk gigs back in the early 80s that I can remember. And then anyone who was playing in a punk band back then would tell you they were pretty fascinating events, all those punk gigs.
Fascinating is one way to describe it, Ray.
Yeah, violent as well. But
Yes.
It's thankful that a lot of the violence is gone, obviously. But at the same time, incredibly talented people came through a lot of those punk shows, and it's sad to think that a lot of those talented people who ended up not really kicking on. I just consider the Hard-Ons extremely lucky that we kind of one of the things that we didn't do was hard drugs. So that actually put us in good stead for touring for 4 months overseas. A lot of our friends did hard drugs, and that actually hampered their progress. A lot of our friends did hard drugs, and they continued being really successful, but that wasn't really part of what we did, and it helped us, our career, that's for sure.
Was that a decision, as you three in the band, to not do that because you thought it might slow things down?
When we first met, we were all really into sport as well in primary school and high school. I remember Blackie, the guitar player, and Kesh, the drummer, they were both extremely talented sports people. Blackie did it. He did representative cross-country running and stuff, and I remember him being a very good squash player. Kesh was an extremely talented tennis, not so much tennis, but cricket. He was a great cricket player. So all 3 of us really were into sport and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty hard to play a game of tennis that evening if you're smacked out. So we didn't do too many hard drugs. It wasn't really part of our cultural reference point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I just think, and quite often when you get into those mixed social scenes, you do get swept up in things, as people often do. So it's,
Yeah. the problem is that we were from Punchbowl, and Punchbowl has for better or worse, it has a very strong cultural identity, and that is one of working class suburbia. And all of our friends were into going to rugby league games and stuff like that. And we kept in touch with a lot of those guys, because those guys would come and support us when we would play gigs. A whole horde of them would come from our old high school to come and support us, and they did that for years. So, you know, I mean, we were never cast off from our original roots at all. So we never got, seduced by the inner city indie or punk scene too much, because all our friends were still living in the suburbs and stuff.
It was easy. I just kissed her. Yeah, she was so sweet. Yeah, she was so sweet. Touched her skin, as wet as a Nile. And she stole my heart, man. A magic kiss, a magic smile.
I'm talking to Ray from the Hard-Ons. 30 years on, it's been a pretty incredible journey you've gone through, Ray. This tour you're doing at the moment, you're heading around the country playing a bunch of shows, some great little rooms you're playing. You're playing a whole stack of songs from the initial period of the band before you broke up the first time, 84 to 93. How is this set list decided upon? Who made the call on which songs got in?
Well, we pretended to have an online poll. We told people that's what we were doing.
Yes.
But the whole time we had in our heads what we were going to play. So
right.
But then I thought, I better keep my word. So what I did, I actually collated all the information and put it on a spreadsheet. And once I worked out how to use an Excel spreadsheet, it gave me a good indication of what songs are the most popular. And they were really obvious choices. They tended to be our singles that we put out and whatnot, and the first song from each album tended to be well represented.
Oh, okay.
And so people are asking for songs that we thought they would pick anyway.
Yep.
And then we beefed that up with 10 or 12 of our own choices, and that gave us a whole set. And there were a couple of people that were really big fans of the band that were writing to us and saying, can you do this particular song? For example, no one actually picked a song called Simple Love, which was a B-side of a single from 1992, but a guy who's a really huge fan named Luke, he's from Leeton, and he's been following the band for a long time. He asked us to play, so just for him, we added that to the set as well. So that's how we picked it, basically. It was kind of like consensus. It kind of fell into place quite easily, actually.
So we're going to get all the hits, is what you're saying, Ray. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, all the hits. I mean, when you say hits, we're not talking we're not talking the Beatles or Powderfinger, and we're not even talking Something for Kate. We're not talking about any of these levels, We're talking about the Hard-Ons, Jesus.
Are they the four levels of hits? Are they, Ray? It's the Beatles,
there's probably about
Powderfinger.
48 levels of hits, and we're on about the 40s rung.
Okay, all right, fine. I just want to know.
I don't know. Maybe someone like the Meanies might sit just below us or something. I don't know.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? I mean, we're a band that everyone knows, but at the same time, we're not. None of us are Tim Rogers from UMI or anything like that.
Right.
We're not exactly a household name.
Oh, look, I don't know. I think you're a household name in many households across Australia.
Oh, yeah. People, independent rock music was a huge part of a lot of people's lives back in the early 80s to early 90s. That was probably the golden era of underground rock for Australia. So, and we did have a lot of success touring and stuff. So I expect a lot of people to know us. But the big problem is that we have been going for a long time, and we only had a 7-year break in the 90s. And the thing is, we still get people coming up and saying, oh, geez, I remember you. I remember you when I was 15. Are you still playing? And I go, well, have you been living under a rock all these years? We never stopped playing. Or we did only for 7 years, but we've been playing for the last 10. They go, no, we just had families, got old, that kind of thing, if you know what I mean. So we have been out of the people's consciousness for a long, long time. But that's okay.
Mate, I'm going to play another classic Hard-On song right now, and then we're going to come back in and I'll give everyone the dates and details about where they can come along and celebrate 30 years of the Hard-Ons with you guys, mate. I think I said this to you last time we spoke. You were the very first punk band I ever saw live, so I urge everyone out there to get out there and just see the Hard-Ons. If you're a fan of Australian music, you need to go and see the Hard-Ons at some point. So hopefully this tour is very successful, and hopefully in 10 more years we're talking about 40 years of the Hard-Ons.
Oh, don't say that, Stu. When you just said 40 years of the Hard-Ons, my knees just completely buckled. Oh, my goodness. No. I don't want to be picking up Ampeg 8x10 when I'm 40. No way.
When you're 40, you're 48 now.
No, when the band's 40.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah, I can't imagine the Hard-Ons when I'm 58. That's insane.
You couldn't have imagined the Hard-Ons when you were 48, though.
I know. Look, I'm 48. I go out to dinner with some of my friends, and they bring their friends along, and we're all in our late 40s. They go, I heard you're a musician. I go, yes. What do you play? I go, why? What do you ask? Oh, I'm a musician also. I play the cello. I go, all right, I'll play bass guitar. Well, okay. What kind of music is it? I go, rock and roll. Then I say, my band called the Hard-Ons. You know? Oh, what, are you really 48? Yes. I formed the band when I was 15. Shut up.
Triple J. That is the Hard-Ons right there. And ending off with a track which is always a highlight of the set, Suck and Swallow. We heard She's a Dish, Something About You, and Girl in the Sweater. And you did hear me talking to Ray Ahn from the Hard-Ons. Amazing band. Make sure you do get along and check them out. Their tour around the country celebrating 30 years continues tomorrow night at the Small Ballroom in Newcastle. Friday night, the Tattersalls Hotel in Penrith. Manning Bar in Sydney on Saturday. That'll be huge. The Corova Lounge in Ballarat next Thursday, the 12th. The 13th of June, you can see them at the Wool Exchange in Geelong. The Corner Hotel on the 14th of June. The 15th at the Bridge Hotel in Castlemaine. On the 19th of June, you can see the Hard-Ons at the Northern in Byron Bay. And it all does wrap up on the 20th of June at the Coolangatta Hotel. That is the Hard-Ons celebrating their 30th anniversary.